Welcome back to Sports Overtime. As always, Ty Hallock, former Detroit Lion, Chicago Bear, Jacksonville Jaguar, Michigan State Spartan joined us.
Former hamstring injury guy.
That's a whole other story. Ty, this was a game they had to win today. They had to win this game today, and they did.
Well, you should have figured you knew we were in trouble when they really didn't want to talk about this. They didn't want to talk about how important this game was, seeing how the St. Louis Rams came in 0-17. Sound familiar, anybody? Yeah, one more than what we were a year ago. Good for them that it wasn't all in one season, and it's not going to be in a season this year because their friends, the Lions, said, hey, we got that record all to ourselves, baby. We want that all to ourselves. Not quite sure what happened. Jim Schwartz, love the guy as a coach, but I can tell you this. You got 2 weeks to practice for St. Louis Rams, and you come out and lay an egg like this. Look, I know you don't have Calvin Johnson, but you had Sammy Hill back, and at the end of the day, when you look at this football game, it was about being able to stop the run that cost them the football game late. Steven Jackson, certainly a formidable back, played like an all-pro today, but, you know, there's a few backs that play like all-pros against the Lions. Just happened to be that way today, but a tough loss for Jim Schwartz and his staff, in my opinion, especially considering having 2 weeks. I know Jim Schwartz took a tough task when he came to Detroit, but man, oh man, 2 weeks to prepare for a team that's really not that good, and you lose like that, not a good situation.
You lead me right into my next question. Larry mentioned it being a must-win, and I was going to bring up, okay, and they're coming off the bye week, and here the Rams, a 17-game losing streak. How big, or I should say, how bad was this, especially when you had 2 weeks to prepare for arguably the worst team in the league, and you can't even put them away at home?
Well, I think the biggest damage is done in the locker room, quite frankly. These guys came out, they knew internally, I guarantee as a player, you'd know the pressure to win this football game, being at home, having the opportunity to play a losing team. You're actually a favorite, which is something that's not going to happen probably for the rest of the year. You had to have felt the pressure. But again, look, there's no excuses here. These guys, they put on the pads the same way. All due respect to St. Louis. I have a lot of respect for those guys. They get their paycheck too. But come on, Detroit. You had a bye week to get ready for the worst team in the league. Well, kind of the worst team in the league. The next worst team in the league. And unfortunately, this is something, again, I will submit to you, I like Jim Schwartz. I know he's eventually going to get us there when he gets some of the right players in place. But man, oh man, this is a tough one to take, given some of the improvement I felt like we were seeing to come back and have a loss like this.
And nobody expected this to be a good team, but there's been optimism, as you mentioned. Calvin Johnson leaves that line. I mean, Matthew Stafford's numbers weren't good, but he didn't get a lot of help today. Calvin Johnson's not on that offense. They just can't do anything. Why is that? I mean, just nobody else can stretch the field?
Well, Brian Johnson, look, he right out of the gates today dropped a pass that really set the tone for the whole day. Guys dropped the pass. They didn't help Matthew Stafford very, very much during the course of the day. Quite frankly, the only way they got the touchdown late was Matthew Stafford's legs, for goodness sakes, and it's his arm that's the strength. So it's a crazy situation, and unfortunately for the Lions, Calvin Johnson can't play D-line too, because if you can't stop the run and you can't stop a back like Steven Jackson, granted, again, good football player, but guys, you had him backed up. The special teams did their job, made it a long field, and they just went right down the field, 17 and 10 and 12 yards. Unfortunate for Detroit, but it's a loss, and they're going to have to move on, and Jim Schwartz is going to have to continue to work on that recipe of players, and I guarantee you'll start to see them shuffled a little bit too.
All right, so if today's loss to the Rams got you fired up, I can only imagine what you were doing last night on the couch while watching Michigan State, Minnesota, especially at the end of the game there.
Well, you know, look, there's very few things that get me as fired up, and I'm not a Michigan State homer. This goes to the National Football League, this goes to the SEC, and granted, it goes to the Big Ten. And even Jim Brandstetter, a Michigan guy, was talking about it today, both in the Iowa game against Indiana and Michigan State last night. You can't tell me that it is not a catch, a run, and a fumble. Unbelievable. The officiating has gotten worse. Replay across the board, whether it's peewee or professional, should be the way to make it right, not screw it up or not give the guys excuses. I get so sick of hearing about inconclusive evidence or something that didn't quite fit right with the way they wanted to do it. Their pride gets in the way, so they can't change the call. Baloney, Grandma. I want a common sense official in every single press box known to the human race for here on out with football. You guys, I'm telling you, it's not rocket scientist stuff here. You know, we're not doing anything crazy and wild. We're talking about getting it right, and they still can't get it right. Mark D'Antonio, I give him a ton of credit. I think he's a good coach, and I think he will eventually get us the right way. But look, you can't leave it up to the officials, so Michigan State certainly didn't play the right way. But man, oh man, when you have a big decision to be made like that for these officials, and they still screwed up, even with instant replay, what's the world coming to?
Baloney grandma.
Baloney grandma. You know, his college eligibility's done, but I think they ought to dust off the L49 because he's pretty fired up today.
I think he could play, too.
I do, too.
Yeah, I think so. Ty, thank you.
You
Appreciate
betcha.
it.